Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on such a star-studded lineup. I'm truly honored. I want to begin today by introducing you to my lovely grandmother. She is 87 and she lives in Southern California. She loves to go for walks in the afternoon and meet her friends for tea. She plays a lot of mahjong. How many of you play mahjong? Yeah, okay. If there's such a thing as a mahjong shark, that is my grandmother. And she watches kung fu soap operas and goes to church twice a week. And she's 87 and lives an incredibly vibrant life. And so you might want to know what her secret is. Well, she has two, actually. Her first secret is that she makes sure to laugh heartily at least 3 times per day. And the other, perhaps more fundamental, is Mrs. Sun. Mrs. Sun is my grandmother's caregiver. She comes to my grandmother's home a couple of times per week to help with the cooking and the cleaning and the washing and some chores that she can't do on her own. And when my grandfather had a stroke, Mrs. Sun was there day in and day out, caring for my grandfather and supporting my grandmother. Mrs. Sun is as warm and constant as her name and is always there for my family. My grandmother taught me pretty much everything that is meaningful and matters in life. Well, she potty trained me, which was useful, still proves useful. And she also taught me most of my values that I hold true, that really shape who I am and how I look at the world. And one thing she always said is that caring is life's greatest gift, and that we must always remember to appreciate the people who take care of us. Like nannies and elder care workers and housekeepers around the country, Mrs. Sun contributes so much to my family, to our community, to the country, and to the economy. And yet, still, most domestic workers are earning poverty wages with little to no worker protections or basic benefits. These are the people who care so much for us and are not cared for in return. And that is why I run an organization of Mrs. Suns, women like Marlene champion. She's a domestic worker right here in New York, and she's seen it all. Wonderful employers who have stayed in touch with her their entire lives, as well as the ones that ask you to clean the floor with a toothbrush. Marlene helped us pass the Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights in New York State, and there are 4 more bills just like it in state legislatures around the country, so we are making progress. A few years ago, Marlene started asking for training in elder care, and many of her colleagues did as well. More and more domestic workers started being called upon to take care of the aging relatives of their employers. And it was such a pattern that we started to really take notice. We realized that they were experiencing firsthand a tremendous change in the country. On the one hand, communities of color, particularly immigrant communities, are growing. And we often hear about the fact that by the year 2040, we will be a majority-minority nation. This change is clearly beginning to shape American politics as we look at immigration reform on the horizon and many other things. But there's another change happening: the age wave. People are living longer, and the baby boom generation is starting to turn 65 at a rate of a person every 8 seconds. 10,000 people per day, 4 million people per year turn 65 in America. Some call it a silver tsunami. Whatever you call it, it has arrived. Take Ohio, for example. Today, Ohio is 83.6% white, 12.4% African American, 5% immigrant, including Latino. And this is a map of Ohio in 2000. The orange counties have 22 to 25% of the population over the age of 60. This is Ohio in 2010. The red counties are where 25 to 35% of the population is over 60. This is Ohio in the year 2020. And we all know the significance of Ohio come election season. Yes, the age wave will be shaping our lives. And every single one of us is probably experiencing and feeling it in some way already. Every one of us probably has a story about someone we love who has Alzheimer's, or who had a heart attack, or simply should not be driving or using a stove alone or on their own. The need for care and support for the aging and people with disabilities is great. And we're already feeling it. We can't afford it, we can't manage it, or the people we want to hire are undocumented or untrained. From every angle, it's just not quite working. And whether we're care workers or consumers, we're all challenged by it in some level, and we're dealing with it for the most part in isolation. So we at the Domestic Workers Alliance began meeting with aging and disability advocates, home care unions, immigrant and civil rights organizations, and women's groups. And what we realized is that there's a tremendous opportunity here to create a win-win solution for everyone, to create a whole new approach based on care as an American value, one that brings together the interests of families and individuals who need care and support with the people and families who provide that care and support to create a more caring economy and society for all of us. Our campaign is called Caring Across Generations, and we are building what we call a Caring Majority Alliance, putting forward a vision for the future that fundamentally ties our interests together across diverse experiences. We're working in 17 cities with a coalition of more than 200 organizations to create 2 million new quality jobs in home-based care over the course of the next 10 years. And we want to make sure that every last one of those jobs is a job that you can take pride in and support your family on, with career pathways and a road to citizenship for the immigrant care workforce. And we want to make sure that care is accessible and affordable for every single family who needs it in America. But more importantly, for our purposes here today at this conference, we are learning some pretty important lessons that we think are relevant for philanthropy as we do this work. One is that our demographic changes mean that we must pay particular attention to being able to articulate a coherent vision for this country that truly does include all of us across race, class, and generation. From the white senior in Ohio to the immigrant domestic worker in New York, the African American veteran in Georgia to the LGBT young person in Arizona. Sometimes those visions will necessarily be longer term, but we must, and this is an opportunity to, look ahead at who we are becoming as a nation and shape it in our values. Embrace it in its totality and seize the moment to shape the future together. None of us can do it alone, which is why we must work across these lines. And if we do not, we risk greater political polarization, particularly in this economic climate. Second, building this inclusive intergenerational agenda for the future necessarily begins with values. Each of us can identify some core values that help us remember what matters most, that help us remember, help us bring out the best of who we are. When we build initiatives based on values, we can both celebrate our diversity and have a strong foundation to build social change work on. This is only becoming more and more important as the changing role of money in politics means that hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on political ads that are rooted in fear and division, speaking to the worst in who we are every election cycle. The only antidote to that is to really reground ourselves all year round, every year, in the values like respect, care, opportunity, and democracy. Dare I say love, the stuff that our grandmothers teach us. 3, these movements build through the power of story and relationship. We build strong connections with one another across very different realities when we begin to understand one another's stories. We build human connection and relationships, and in that context, it's organizing that really matters. Community organizing is quite simply listening and sharing stories in order to build the relationships that will change the world around us. Organizing matters, and we've seen it again and again. And last year, we and our partners took the opportunity of an election year to talk to more than 500,000 senior voters in 5 states about the issues that they care about. We built relationships across age, race, and class, experience, and what we learned changed what we care about and how we see the world forever. And that's what it's all about. Fourth and finally, we believe that this is a moment for an investment in women, not as a special interest group, but as visionaries and agents of the kind of 21st century social change that was most needed in this moment. Today, women are more than half of the paid workforce, more than half of the electorate with a longer average life expectancy, and unfortunately still much more likely to live in poverty. Those poverty rates are even higher among women of color, as many of us know. And I don't believe that it's an accident that domestic workers have led us towards the kind of win-win solutions that they have. Because when life begins to work better for low-income women, it begins to change for all of us. Now, particularly in a moment where we risk unprecedented levels of inequality and polarization, low-income women can be our Jedis, to use a Star Wars metaphor, on the front lines, helping us to see what we can't quite always see ourselves, and to help us find the way to safety and victory for all of us. This moment of change is fundamentally an opportunity for all of us to transform our economy and relationships in our values. We believe that it's within reach and that we can see the seeds of it everywhere, even in our own families. Thank you.